Thanks for joining us on this midweek edition of Inside Africa. The people of Nkotimsom in the upper Central West district of the Western region in Ghana have sent an SOS to governments to reclaim their land, which has been destroyed by illegal miners. Most farmlands in the area are now deep pits left up behind by Chinese and Ghanaian illegal miners.
For some time now, the government has been battling with illegal mining with that of the Chinese dominating headlines. One area that seemed to be reeling under the pressure of these illegal mining is Upper Central West District. The result of the unlawful extraction of the gold is land degradation and pollution of water bodies. One striking feature of the lands that has been operated on by the Galamsey operators are deep pits, thus making the land difficult to be used for farming again. However, some of the small-scale miners have done well by covering the pits they have dug. Amanuama is the native of Nkotimsom and complains that she cannot engage in farming due to the scary pits, mostly caused by the Chinese. Most students in the area were also found mining the yellow metal to the detriment of their education. When asked about their reason for not being in school, these were their responses. The residents of Nkotimsom are explaining to the government to help them cover the pits dug by the miners so that the land can be put to use again.
Now, the need to strengthen the capacity and advocacy of the private sector formed the basis of a forum held by BUSAC in the Ghanaian capital, Accra. According to the BUSAC fund manager, Mr. Nicholas Gebara, the private sector is key to economic development and measures to improve its potential should be encouraged.
The BUSAC Fund is a project set up to strengthen private sector businesses and associations. The first phase of the BUSAC Fund ended 3 years ago. It led to the provision of 362 grants to business groups and associations in all 10 regions. A second phase has been designed to increase competitiveness of Ghanaian products. It is expected to run for 5 years. According to the BUSAC Fund manager, Nicholas Gebera, the contribution of the BUSAC Fund to the development of Ghana is enormous.
As of this year, we have scaled up our efforts to provide support to advocacy issues that need to be addressed at national and policy levels. Engaging the private sector in the legislative advisory process provides a vital opportunity for dialogue on reform issues with policymakers. Private sector associations are important for improving Ghana's business climate and making the broader business community a part of democratic decision-making.
Mr. Joseph Taki, the Chief Executive Officer of the Private Sector Development Strategy, said Ghana can in no means undermine the importance of BUSAC and private sector to development.
The private sector plays a crucial role in the economic development of our country. We also know that they cannot play that role to help Ghana create the prosperity we all aspire for our people if they are not given the right kind of environment in which to operate effectively and efficiently.
He advised private entrepreneurs to place importance to adding value to their exports on the international market.
African women have called on heads of states to strengthen the women's empowerment and agenda mainstreaming in the African Union. The 22nd Gender in My Agenda campaign, JIMAC Summit, has taken place in Ethiopia's capital, Addis Ababa, under the theme of the role of women and youth in Africa's future.
The 22nd Gender is My Agenda campaign, pre-summit consultative meeting on gender mainstreaming in the African Union, deliberated on the role of women and youth in shaping the future of Africa. On the occasion, Ms. Benita Diop, chairperson of the executive board of FEMS Africa Solidarity, called on African leaders to actively participate women in their agendas in transforming the continent.
You know, the women that are not recognized most of the time, because when we say the founding fathers of Africa. But what about the founding mothers? We tend to forget them, and they have been there. So we wanted to show them, to make sure that they are at the forefront. We will celebrate them, we will dance with them, we will hug them, we will understand their history, we will transmit it to the young generation. Look at this beautiful Isiye where we are standing. This is where the Nyereres, and the Krumas, the Selassies, the Senghor, this is where they were standing to proclaim the unity of Africa. Now we are saying Africa should be really integrated, united, and Africa should stand one. Who can make it? The dream of those leaders happening is the people. It's not just the leader, it's the people who can be united.
Women organizations from all over Africa, including the grassroots women and women farmers, participated in the 22nd Gender is My Agenda campaign.
I am a rural woman and a farmer as such. Now, there is no way I can get my pleas or my information up to, say, the head of states. Nobody will listen to it. So we are trying to use GMAC as our voice. And maybe then the heads of states will be able to channel whatever assistance they can down to the grassroots. There's no way we can, each of us individually goes to the heads of states and states our problem and challenges. And we also try to give the recommendations, because actually the best recommendation comes from the grassroots women.
We need to congratulate the African Union. We need to congratulate GMAC, because it has been a space where women can come and voice. And we need to congratulate the African Union because it has consistently listened to women. And we would like to say that in the next 50 years, really, we must look at the contradiction of being the richest continent on earth and having so many people in poverty must be erased.
Gender is My Agenda campaign, GMAC, is a women's platform that was formed 10 years ago to create space for civil society organizations to formulate and promote a gender agenda for Africa.
We need an Africa that is prosperous, and an Africa that is at peace with itself, an Africa that places women and gender equality at the heart of its programs.
Let's take you now to South Africa, where just on the outskirts of Johannesburg, there is a school whose only ambition is to change the face of Africa. The African Leadership Academy is an institution established to transform Africa by identifying, developing, and connecting the continent's next generation of leaders.
Hello, Julie. Nice to meet you. Welcome to the African Leadership Academy. My name is Siaka William, and I'll be showing you around.
As I meet Siaka William from Tanzania, I immediately understand that he will be a role model for many young Africans. He is graduating this June and will be starting Yale University in the United States. A true achievement for someone whose main aim is to bring change.
It has names of people who endorse or have demonstrated that value. The first thing I'm going to try to do is help improve the Tanzanian economy, after which I think the effort would be to improve the African economy as a whole. And the future for me, I think, is helping Africa come together as a continent of people rather than a continent of individual citizens from each nation.
The African Leadership Academy was founded in 2004 by Fred Swaneker with the belief that ethical leadership is the key to transforming the African continent.
Trying to reform the existing leaders we have in Africa is a lost cause. You can't change someone who's 60 or 70 years old. You need to start from scratch. We need to groom a whole new set of leaders from scratch. And so that's how the vision came about, to develop an academy that would actually identify people that we believe could be transformative leaders for Africa. We believe that somewhere out there on the continent is the next Nelson Mandela, or the next Desmond Tutu.
ALA aims to develop thousands of transformative and ethical leaders for Africa over the next 50 years.
We look for the most talented young Africans whom we can give the best opportunity to grow into young leaders who will transform this continent. So we work with about 3,000 or 4,000 partners across the continent to look for the most talented Africans. We get kids from as far as refugee camps in South Sudan to the middle of Santon who are living in high-end areas. So we're not a school for poor kids, we're a school for talented Africans.
After meticulous selection, future leaders are brought here to this world-class boarding school for a 2-year pre-university program that will shape them.
We look for really a passion for service. We look for a willingness to develop, a humility, if you might say, and usually just a resilience, a desire to push through. We put them through a lot of challenges here.
Hopefully I'll be the future Minister of Education in Egypt.
As a student here, I discovered a passion for computer science, and I'm thinking of IT startups. I'm thinking of transforming the continent on the technology sector.
Good luck. Enjoy Yale. All the best. Thank you.
Moving on, police in Tunisia have arrested a female activist for painting a feminist message on the wall of a mosque and trying to expose her breast. 19-year-old Amina Tyler was found in the midst of police covers with headline Salafist group Ansar al-Sharia in the central Tunisian town of Kairouan on Sunday.
Tunisia's Interior Ministry has said that a female activist has been arrested for painting a feminist message on the wall of a mosque and trying to expose her breasts. The young woman, known as Amina, sparked controversy recently for publishing nude photos of herself on Facebook, in which she wrote on her chest, "My body belongs to me and not the honor of others." Amina claims to be part of a feminist group based in Ukraine called Femin, whose radical topless demonstrations have repeatedly made headlines. She reportedly scrawled the name of the group on the mosque as a protest against Islamist treatment of women. Meanwhile, a heavy police presence continued to gather in the city of Kairouan as supporters of Islamist group Ansar al-Sharia threw stones after the group was barred by the government from holding its annual meeting. Tens of thousands of members of the group had been due to attend the main rally in the central city. Ansar al-Sharia is the most radical Islamist group to emerge in Tunisia since autocrat Ben Ali was toppled in 2011 and poses a test to the authority of the moderate Islamist government. The group's leader, Saifullah bin Aqsin, also known as Abu Liad, is a former al-Qaeda fighter in Afghanistan and is wanted by police for allegedly inciting an attack on the U.S. Embassy in September. 4 people were killed in those disturbances, which began as a protest over a film that mocked the Prophet Muhammad.
We are now in Kenya, where Samuel Mungai Kungu, a resident of Kikuyu, Kiambu County, on several occasions claims he has been burnt, beaten and insulted by his wife, Joyce Wakangi, allegedly for not being man enough. Kungu is currently nursing burns after his wife poured hot water on his chest and locked him up for 6 days before he was rescued by curious neighbors.
A frail and bitter man. This is 42-year-old Samuel Mungai Kongo displaying burn wounds he received after his 33-year-old wife allegedly poured hot water on his chest during a domestic brawl 10 days ago.
Bibi kila niliuliza iko pesa, amwambia hatukupewa pesa.
At Tigoni District Hospital, where he was admitted with septic wounds 6 days after he was burned, apparently his wife locked him up in the house for 5 days when she realized the extent of injuries inflicted on him. He was later to be rescued by neighbors and the area's sub-chief and taken to hospital for treatment. The errant wife has since disappeared and is yet to be traced. Will he forgive his wife?
Badala kumuona hata ni vizuri nikufe.
And should another opportunity open up, will he remarry again?
Paul wa Biblia si aliishi peke yake, akina Yesu aliishi peke yao. Sasa hiyo sio lazima uoe divoishi.
The area's sub-chief, who did not wish to be interviewed on camera, confirmed the report and mobilized community members to raise money to cover the medical bill before Mungai could be discharged. We arrive at his home in Kitaru location, Kikuyu district of Kiambu County. With a dazed look on his face, he recounts the events of that fateful night. No picture of Joyce can be found in the house, which probably tells of a man eager to turn a new leaf in his troubled life. But this is not the first time such has happened to Mungai.
Walikuwa na susana sana, walikuwa napigana na dada yangu sana, na baba yangu akamfukuza. Huyu brother yangu baada ya kuboa nyumba nikaonelea yeye huruma. Nikamwambia arudi hapa nyumbani akuja akae nyumba hii ya mama yangu.
Mungai, who is a carpenter by trade, has been married to Joyce Wakangi for 22 years, with whom they have 4 children aged between 3 and 20. And the little money he makes has always been taken by his wife.
Hii vitu yake ya uzazi imeumwa, ameuma na kichwa na mdomo. Sasa uma na mdomo hiyo bibi yake. Kwa hivyo yeye hawezi kutumia hiyo nini? Hawezi kutumia hiyo vitu ya uzazi vizuri. Bona analala kwa.
Now, more than 1,000 officers from 10 different East African countries are undergoing training in Uganda's eastern town of Jinja. They form part of a new security force being put in place by Uganda to react to the primary threat against it from Islamist terror groups.
Uganda has started training a new security force to react to the primary threat against it from Islamist terror groups. Over 1,000 officers are being trained in the eastern town of Jinya. Participants come from 10 different East African countries and are composed of the military, the police, and civilians. The standby troops are to be trained in artillery and helicopter combat.
The standby force will have the authority to intervene in a genocide-like situation or a gross human rights abuse in a country.
The training comes at a time when the region has been hit by numerous threats of terrorism, the most notable being the Somalia-based al-Qaeda cell, Al-Shabaab, who carried out a bombing in 2010 that led African Union leaders to change their stance on terrorism. The 2010 attacks were the worst East Africa has seen since al-Qaeda targeted U.S. embassies in Kenya and Tanzania in 1998. Recently, a 2-day summit of regional police chiefs from 12 East African nations took place in the Ugandan capital of Kampala. International donors, including the UK, the US, Qatar, and Asian governments, pledged tens of millions of dollars to help support the struggling government in its efforts to protect itself from Islamist militants.
If the commission, AU commission, in its wisdom, determines that country X is being irregularly led, and therefore, in its wisdom, we must do something about it, and they think that something they need to do is to use force to return constitutionalism, so be it.
It is expected that in 2015, the newly operational standby force will be capable of taking on any mission given to them by the UN or the AU.
Somalia is on course to regain control over its airspace after 18 years of management by the United Nations International Civil Aviation Organization from Nairobi. That transition, however, will take a few months as flights to Mogadishu increase and business picks up following the expulsion of Al-Shabaab militants from the capital.
Somalia is preparing to take over the control of its airspace from the International Civil Aviation Organization for the first time in 2 decades. Somali Information Minister Abdullahi El-Mogi Hirsi and Peter Nord from the International Civil Aviation Organization have signed an agreement that will see the country take over the control of its airspace by the end of this year. 100 airspace personnel are also scheduled to be transferred to the capital Mogadishu for management duties, while another batch will travel to Kenya for training.
It's indeed a progress made that Somalia now has the control of its airspace. By the end of this year, Mogadishu will be in charge of its airspace, and everything will be controlled from here and not neighboring Kenya.
After the collapse of Somalia's central government in the 1991 civil war, the United Nations Development Programme and the International Civil Aviation Organization founded a civil aviation caretaker authority for Somalia in Kenya's capital, Nairobi. The organization was charged with collecting overflight revenues on behalf of Somalia.
One is going to be confirmed through the signing of a declaration between the government of Somalia and the International Civil Aviation Organization in Montreal. We are positive that the transition from Kenya to Mogadishu will happen sooner rather than later.
The breakaway region of Somaliland has banned all UN flights from its airports to protest Mogadishu's taking over the control of the country's airspace. The two sides are set to hold talks, but many fear that the discussions might collapse. Aviation experts, however, argue that time is ripe for Somalia to claim sovereignty of its airspace because the Mogadishu administration is in a better position.
And I think the main thing is, by transferring the airspace back, it reinforces the message you're a sovereign state, you have your sovereignty, and it's right and proper you control your airspace.
Somaliland unilaterally declared independence from Somalia in 1991, but it is still regarded as part of Somalia by Mogadishu.
It is on that note that we come to the end of today's edition of Inside Africa. Thanks for watching, and please stay tuned for our programs continue.